Good evening, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, y'all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought, of course, that I would talk about, in my personal view at least, one of the more particularly interesting fights, and possibly the most interesting fight that's going to be happening so far of the year. And certain people may wonder why I personally believe that this fight, which I believe is not even going to be on top ranked pay per view, why this fight in particular is the most interesting to me out of all the great fights that have happened so far this year, including David Benavidez versus Caleb Plant, Tony Harrison versus Tim Tszyu, Javante Tank Davis versus Ryan Garcia, Devin Haney versus Vasily Lomachenko. And I think that I'm leaving possibly one out, but I can't necessarily remember. And of course, we have a few other great fights heading later on down the line as well. But these next three big fights that we're going to have in the boxing scene, Josh Taylor versus Teofimo Lopez, Terrence Bud Crawford versus Errol Spence Jr., and Naoya or Naoya Inoue versus that of Stephon Fulton. In my view, those three fights, in my view, have probably debatably the biggest impact in terms of boxing, not necessarily in terms of the pay-per-view numbers or who may necessarily be looked at as the number one star in terms of boxing, but in terms of what it's really going to do to both of those fighters' careers. It's going to be very particularly interesting. But anyways, both Teofimo Lopez and Josh Taylor in this little segment here, and I thought that I would review it. They're going to be talking about their up-and-coming fight this Saturday night, I believe, that on June 10th. Of course, this is going to be my final fight prediction and my final fight breakdown. And this really is a very interesting fight to me because this is a very big crossroads fight, in my view, for both fighters. And some people may say, well, what are you talking about? Why would it be a crossroads fight for Josh Taylor? He's never lost in his career. Sure, he's coming off of a controversial decision. It really should be Teofimo Lopez, that is really worried about if he loses this fight. And I think that Teofimo should be worried, of course, if he ends up losing this fight. Both fighters, in my view, are fighting for their careers, but I'm going to explain why, in my view, that Josh Taylor more than likely is going to have to really fight for his career in terms of this fight as well. Because in my personal view, if Top Rank were to have a choice in terms of who they would rather give the fight to, they more than likely would want to give this fight to Teofimo Lopez. Not saying that a robbery is going to occur, but I would not be surprised that if this was a fight that could go either way, even if the majority of the people thought that Josh Taylor won, they more than likely, in my view, are probably going to give that decision to that of Teofimo Lopez. So Josh Taylor, in my view, he is going to have to be very dominant in this fight at a very bare minimum, win this fight 8 rounds to 4. Pretty much like he did against Jose Ramirez and certain other fighters in his weight division as well. But anyways, both Josh Taylor and Teofimo Lopez, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to give my fight breakdown as well and my fight prediction and what both fighters bring to the table. They're going to talk about it as well. Thought it would be very interesting. Let's get straight into it.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the fight the boxing world has been waiting for.
People call me a legend. People call me the greatest.
Who calls you the
Keep
greatest?
going for it.
You call yourself the greatest.
What a big shot by Lopez!
Calling himself Undisputed World Champion is fantasy.
Oh! Taylor scores the knockdown!
This is a fight game. What do I have to lose?
Okay, we'll see.
Oh, Josh Taylor's got him with a right.
Why you go out there with your Scottish dress?
You're a piece of
I'm not a piece of I am the
And there it is! Teofimo Lopez!
Yeah, you're going to feel the wrath, boy. Trust me. You're going to feel it.
Oh, man. I can't wait, man. I'm going to this guy up, man. I can't wait. This is going to be fun.
I'll say this before they continue any further. Their kind of clash of personalities is really also going to make this fight very highly intriguing. Teofimo Lopez has always had a very brash personality. In my view, sometimes a little bit too brash for his own good. And in my view, that did cost him a little bit in the George Kambosos fight because he was a little bit too overconfident and he fought a very stupid fight, in my view, to where he probably could have won that fight and should have won that fight. But he pretty much charged George Kambosos the whole entire time with his hands down, which he also has a very big problem with. A lot of the times, he does not keep his hands up to the greatest of degrees, so he's going to have to watch out in this fight. Josh will have to watch out for, that in this fight as well, but he tends, in my view, to have a better defense. I'm not going to say much better defense but a decently better defense than that of Teofimo Lopez. His fundamentals, at least, are better. But this is going to be a very interesting fight because, once again, their clash of personalities, in my view, this did make for a very good segment.
Hey, Gareth, this is Karan Bhatia in Fort Lauderdale. How are you, sir?
I'm very well. I've just stepped into Rotunda ABC Gym in Liverpool. Josh Taylor's here. You got the man there?
I have the man, Teofimo Lopez, the takeover. He's here. He's ready. I'm really pumped to talk to these guys because there's a lot of bad blood, and these are also spectacular fighters. We've seen what they can do. We've seen what they can do in the ring.
Let's rock and roll.
Let's do it.
Yeah, we're ready to roll. You're looking great shape already, Josh.
I'm always in shape.
Ready for
Always.
June the 10th,
Oh,
Madison
can't wait.
Square Garden?
Can't come quick enough, Gareth. Can't come quick enough, mate.
Okay, we're rolling. Quiet in the set, please.
Well, let's say, first of all, it's great to have the two teams here. What a phenomenal fight.
So let me just start it off, and then I'm going to ask Tio a question. So as much as there are differences between you guys, there are a lot of similarities. When you look at your record, 18-1, 13 knockouts. He's 19-0, 13 knockouts. That's very similar. You're both in your prime. You've both tasted undisputed. In your mind, are there any similarities between you and Josh Taylor?
Well, actually, no. Teofimo Lopez and Josh Taylor is going to state this. Actually, Teofimo Lopez, he hasn't really tasted undisputed. Now, when you talk about it in terms of almost undisputed or slightly undisputed, or that he's unified belts, yes, you can say that he's unified belts. But Teofimo Lopez was never fully undisputed. That's one point that I've always agreed with because the WBC franchise belt, that's not a real belt.
Who has it? There's only one undisputed champ.
Oh, man. No, so to answer your question, no, really, I don't think there's any similarities. The only thing that I think that we have in common is that it's two undisputed champions going at it, head on June 10th. So I'm looking forward to that, and remaking history like I did against Lomachenko. I'm going to do it against Josh Taylor.
Calling himself the undisputed world champion is fantasy. It's one thing that he'll never have is an undisputed champion crown. He needs to stop calling himself that. Fantasy.
And they must change the rules with the WBC because that's super champion. Last time I checked.
It's a Mickey Mouse belt.
Yeah, but Tio, you never officially won the WBC title. Lomachenko ended up giving up his WBC title, I believe, to that of Devin Haney. And then you never even fought Devin Haney for that. So, I mean, he, of course, got the WBC franchise title off of Lomachenko. But once again, that's not a real title. I'm sorry.
You gotta know your stuff, my man. You gotta know your stuff.
You should have been, but you weren't.
I shouldn't be. But see, he confirmed that I am. So, it's just all about
You should
perception
have
of
been. I
self.
said you should have been, but you weren't. Fact or
Yeah,
fact.
it's all good. It's all good, man.
So Tio, well, let's get your thoughts in a technical sense. I know you said Josh Taylor's going to have a plan A. When that fails, that's when you're going to take advantage, right? So what is the game plan in this fight?
Well, that's going to be very interesting because if you actually ask me, out of any fighter of these two that could potentially have a plan A and their plan B, if they even potentially have a plan B, Tio, and it's no offense against him, I do think that he's a very highly talented fighter, but against George Kambosos and also against Sandor Martin, he did not seem to have a great plan B. Against George Kambosos, to be quite honest with you, he really didn't seem to have a plan B at all. Now, once again, I'll give the kid a little bit of a break for that fight because it seemed that Teofimo Lopez was in a little bit of a mentally rough place. And on top of that, I think that he fought a very unintelligent fight and thought that George Kambosos was going to be a lot easier than what he actually was or ended up being. But when it comes down to it, against Josh Taylor, I don't think that Josh Taylor is a one-dimensional or a plan A fighter at all. I think that he has a multitude of game plans, and I think that he can do more than Teofimo Lopez, in my personal view, better things in a more multitude of ways, or he does a multitude of things well more than that of Teofimo Lopez.
No, there's no plan A, plan.
And I'll say this, it's going to be very interesting with Teofimo Lopez to see how he's mentally going to be able to handle and physically going to be able to handle the power and also that the pressure of Josh Taylor, because I have no doubt about it in my mind. Josh Taylor is going to have to try to make Teofimo Lopez uncomfortable in this fight. he is going to try to make Teofimo Lopez uncomfortable in this fight. There's going to be times where Josh Taylor is going to try to get in there. He's going to be throwing certain body shots. He's going to try to control him in the clinch, and he's going to hit him with a good right hook or a good left cross or a good hook on the inside. And I'm not really sure how well Teofimo Lopez is going to handle it. That's not me saying that he doesn't have heart. That's not me saying that he doesn't have grit. But Teofimo Lopez, in my personal view, if you're a Teofimo Lopez fan, you do have to be a little bit worried about where he's been mentally as of late. And of course, he shows up in good condition here, at least for that of the cameras. But you kind of expect that. The real question that I have about Teofimo Lopez mentally is, first of all, how will he adapt to Josh Taylor's style? Because Teofimo Lopez has not shown me that he is a great multi-dimensional fighter. I think that he's shown that he's a great mid-range and a great slick fighter. But he has shown me that if a fighter is willing to exchange with him, or that if he's willing to, kind of go at some of Teofimo Lopez's weaknesses, that he's going to have a great amount of problems adapting. So like I said, we'll see what happens. And on top of that, I also need to see where he's at mentally, because there's been apparently a lot of things going on outside the ring for Teofimo Lopez, and I don't think that he handled that George Kambosos fight loss well. So like I said, we'll see what ends up happening.
No. The way we work is just adapting. All the technical parts of Taylor, he has the accolades. You got to respect that. Very true. Very true. And that's why I've been working hard and busting my butt. I like to go after these challenges. Look, all these other fighters out there right now, they're not facing no one like Taylor. They're fighting come-ups. They're fighting things to build their records. I'm someone that's old school. Blood, sweat, and tears. Sugar Ray Robinson. That's really what it comes to.
What mistakes do you see in Josh Taylor when you watch him fight?
There's a lot. There's a lot of mistakes. I mean, hey, all the fighters he had.
The main mistakes that I see with Josh Taylor, and this was also a great video by that of Boxing Gems. Of course, some of you are probably familiar with that channel. One of the points that he ended up bringing up that I also personally agree with is that Josh Taylor sometimes lunges a little bit too much with his punches. And I tend to agree with that. Josh Taylor, he is going to have to be careful. He's going to have to keep his hands up a little bit more than what he did in the Jack Catterall fight, certainly more than what he did. I'll say this, if Josh Taylor shows up in the same condition as what he did in the Jack Catterall fight, he's going to lose this fight, and he's probably going to lose this fight dominantly. But I don't expect him to show up in that same way. I personally believe that he's going to be a better fighter, just like what he was in the Regis Prograis and the Jose Ramirez fight. But the main flaws that I see with Josh Taylor is that sometimes, just like Teo, his hands can be down a little bit too much. That he needs to move in and out sometimes a bit more, but he usually actually does that quite well. So I'm not really going to count that. That's just a little bit of a nitpick because of the last performance that I've seen him in. And he does need to watch out with the lunging punches.
His face, a lot of them are just very easy to manipulate.
He's going to have to watch out for Teofimo Lopez once he's on the inside and once he gets inside Teofimo's range. He's going to have to either counter Teofimo Lopez very well, or he's going to have to cover up and then counter very well, because Teo is very explosive and he's very quick on countering on the inside, especially with certain fighters when they get a little bit too repetitive and when they don't cover up well. And Teo does have great power.
On and adapt to. So there's a style that he knows, that he works on, that he does, that has worked for him for a long time. And even if they was to change it right now, it's too late, because when you go in the ring, he's going to go right back to that main base.
Josh, now obviously you're southpaw naturally. Teo's an orthodox stance fighter. Do you think that will play into the fight plan?
I don't think so. I just think that there's two styles that we've got that's going to be the makings of an absolute barnstormer of a fight.
I'll say this, I do personally believe that the southpaw style, that it could potentially give Teofimo Lopez some problems. And the reason why I say that is because I think that Teo could have probably put on a better performance in the Salvador Martin fight, or Sandor Martin fight, excuse me. And I think that he was actually expected to fight someone else, but I think that the fighter had to pull out. I could be wrong about that, someone correct me. But Sandor Martin, either way, whether it was on short notice or long notice, he's a tough fighter to kind of fight, because he's a guy that is very slick. He's very highly defensive. He's not going to go on the attack a whole lot, but at times he does know when to pull the trigger. So he's a guy that's going to be very, very tough to fight. So I could give Teo the benefit of the doubt, but there was a lot of punches that Sandor Martin was able to hit Teo with in that fight. That Josh Taylor might also be able to hit him with. A good left hand right down the pipe, which I think is a major punch that Josh is going to have to enforce in this fight. I think that if you're Josh Taylor, that you want to utilize your jab and a left cross right down the pipe. Teo, a lot of the times, he does that Mayweather shit when it comes to the shoulder roll, which of course can be utilized as a great tool and a great weapon if you know how to counter with it. But once again, a lot of these guys, they don't know when to move or when to shoulder roll properly or when to also move off. It's also very similar to Caleb Plant. A lot of these guys are Mayweather impersonators, but they don't know what made Floyd Mayweather Jr. so great. They don't use their feet or their head movement or the counter-punching ability to the same degree as what he did. And sometimes when you try to shoulder roll or do that Philly shell style, sometimes if you don't know what you're doing and if you don't do it to the greatest of your capability, sometimes it can be more of a disadvantage than an advantage. Because sometimes you'll be open for a straight cross right down the pipe or a right hook, depending on your stance. So he's going to have to be very careful.
Fireworks. And unfortunately, I've got the bigger guns, and he does everything the same. Still makes the same mistakes he does when he was an amateur. Very amateurish style. Yes, I give him credit, he beat Lomachenko. But in my opinion, Lomachenko's a featherweight. With one arm,
Agreed. Well, I'm not really going to 100% agree that Lomachenko had one arm. But Lomachenko, in my view, is a debatable featherweight. He's not a natural 135-pounder. Which is why I said, it's going to be very interesting to see when Devin Haney and Teo, when they fight guys their own same size, it's going to be very interesting to see how they do. This is going to be a very big test for Teofimo Lopez because he's finally fighting a guy that, in terms of skill set, that he's right there with Teo, if not possibly even above him. I would probably pick Josh Taylor's skill set over Teo's. And in terms of athleticism, he's also somewhat right there with him. So this is going to be a very interesting fight.
fully fledged light welterweight, and when he comes up against me, he comes up stuck and goes out on his back on a stretcher.
A stretcher.
We'll see. Because some people, a lot of people are actually predicting this fight to end by knockout. I think that it could potentially end by knockout if either fighter potentially does not adapt well. Who would I see potentially getting the knockout more likely? I could see either fighter potentially getting the stoppage. I'm going to predict more than likely that it goes by decision. But if Josh Taylor is able to dominate Teofimo Lopez early on, and if he's able to clearly hurt him, especially early, it's going to be very possible that he can stop him within about 9 or 10 rounds.
So let me ask you this. We're talking about similarities, and you mentioned Southpaw. Teo, in your last fight, you took on a Southpaw in Sandor Martin.
Yep.
That is being scored a knockdown. Very limited work by Martin, but he scored.
And Teofimo Lopez got hit with a good check right hook there. And that's going to be a punch that Teofimo Lopez is going to have to watch out because he does not guard that very well. And one of the points in Boxing Gems video, if you also watch it, which is when a lot of the times Teofimo Lopez, when he throws certain punches, especially that right hand, he doesn't cover up the left side of his face very well. Teo, a lot of the times after he throws certain punches, his hands are down. That's why his defensive mechanics, certain people may predict that he's better defensively, or they may think that he's better defensively than what he actually is because of his swift movement at times. Kind of like Prince Nassim Hamed, but, and I'm not going to say that Teo was as technically inefficient at times in terms of defense as what Nassim Hamed was, for those of you that don't remember him. But Teofimo Lopez is going to have to keep his hands up more in this fight. Sometimes he parries somewhat well and sometimes he defends well. But a lot of other times he keeps his hands down a lot more times than what he should. And other times also he likes to lunge with his feet and he likes to put his back foot forward in front of his front foot, which at times can put him a little bit more square or put him in a weird position.
There's the knockdown with the southpaw right hook.
Both Teofimo and Josh Taylor didn't necessarily have their...
And it's also very interesting that Teofimo Lopez versus Sandor Martin fight because you got so many of these LDBC and new media channels that I like to review. Boxing Eagle, for example, or Dante's Boxing Nation. They love to say how allegedly Teofimo Lopez, that they robbed Sandor Martin of that fight, even though it was a very close fight. Well, these same guys apparently think that Lomachenko clearly lost the Devin Haney fight 8 rounds to 4. But that Sandor Martin versus Teofimo Lopez fight, quiet as kept, that fight actually was very similar to that of the Lomachenko versus Devin Haney fight, just a little bit different, which is that Devin Haney, kind of similar to that of Teofimo Lopez, he really was not landing a whole lot of clear headshots against that of Lomachenko. just like Teofimo Lopez, he also was not landing a lot of headshots against that of Sandor Martin. But when it came down to it, the reason why a lot of people allegedly think that Haney and Teo won was because of the body work, So, and once again, the Haney-Lomachenko fight was very close, but it just, it's very interesting depending on who a lot of these channels or a lot of these, media networks, who they like, which fights they tend to think are robberies, and which decisions they think are just perfectly fine. So very, very interesting once again, because Lomachenko clearly landed the more impactful punches in terms of the head strikes anyway against that at Devin Haney, but one could debate that Haney was a little bit more active to the body, very similar to that of the Teofimo Lopez versus Sandor Martin fight. It's just that Sandor Martin was less active in that fight than what Lomachenko was against that of Devin Haney. But yet these guys apparently believe that Sandor Martin got robbed in that fight, even though Teo probably was the more active fighter of the two. And they think that Devin Haney perfectly won just fine. So once again, it goes to show you that they also have politics of their own, just like that of ESPN and that of old media. But anyway.
Best performances in their last fight. Josh Taylor against Jack Catterall. Josh, you were knocked down, but you did get the split decision victory.
And still!
Yes, and Josh was very fortunate to get that decision. He ended up getting that decision because they could probably use his name, especially if Devin Haney or Teofimo Lopez, if they can potentially get a decision off him, they can say, wow, take a look at that. They defeated a former undisputed champion. Now we're going to move up to the welterweight division or fight someone else at the 140-pound weight division and make an even bigger name for yourself at that weight division. And then maybe later on, put you up at 147, maybe to fight someone there. That's what I believe their personal plans are. That's why I also say that Josh Taylor, he has to really make this fight clear and cut that he ends up winning this fight. Because if this is a fight that could go either way, if it's an all-out war, he's not going to win the decision. He's just not. And I've already stated this. A lot of European fighters, especially Eastern European fighters, especially, and Josh is not Eastern European, he's from Scotland. Britain, of course, today. But, when it comes down to it, and I've already stated this, I said this in my Lomachenko-Devin Haney video. And I had certain people that were saying, oh, well, are you trying to make excuses for these Caucasian fighters? Or are you trying to pull the race card with these Caucasian fighters? No, it's just that, once again, you have to realize, who you are in terms of the marketability. And when we take a look at a lot of these European fighters, like I said, a lot of these LDBC and new media channels, they like to say all this stuff about, oh, well, they have to be careful because, they're going to give these guys the decision because they want to make it look like these Caucasians are on top of the sport. And that, once again, that all sounds great in theory. But when we take a look at the big matchups in terms of who is more favorably marketable, the Eastern European or the Caucasian European fighter has won maybe about 1% of the time in terms of those big matchups, whether they probably deserve to win the fight or not. For example, Canelo Alvarez versus Gennady Triple G Golovkin. Now, once again, certain people may say, well, Canelo Alvarez, you've called him a quote-unquote Caucasian fighter in the past, and yes, that's true. But, Canelo can be, labeled as mestizo, or he can be labeled as a Caucasian Hispanic, and he's from Mexico. Like I said, that's why Canelo, he's pretty much a promoter's wet dream, because he can be, unified with that of the Caucasian or possibly other European marketplace. He also is going to be marketable with that of a lot of the Hispanic audiences. So, once again, Canelo is pretty much the perfect type of fighter if you're a promoter. That's why he's gotten so many big numbers, in terms of, what he brings to the table. And of course, on top of that, he's an all-time great fighter. No doubt about it. But once again, we talk about other fights. Andre Ward versus Sergey Kovalev. That was another one where, it was looked at as the big-time fight, one of the bigger fights of the generation. And Andre Ward got that fight. Josh Taylor versus Jose Ramirez. They were trying to give Jose Ramirez that fight, but Josh Taylor took it away from him, because he ended up getting 2 knockdowns in that fight, and he was very dominant. Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder won, in my view, a fight that Tyson Fury should have very clearly won by unanimous decision. They gave it a draw. Gennady Golovkin versus Canelo Alvarez. Lomachenko versus Devin Haney. Now, some of these fights you could debate could have went either way, like that of the Lomachenko versus Devin Haney fight, but some other ones, the European fighters could have debatably won. And, in the Ward versus Kovalev fight, that was also a fight that could have potentially went either way. I don't mind Ward getting that decision. And some people may say, well, what about George Kambosos versus Teofimo Lopez? And that's probably, debatably the best counter example. But someone else also brought up Gennady Golovkin versus Danny Jacobs. Right, but that was a stepping stone fight. Danny Jacobs was not looked at as the main guy that Gennady Golovkin was favored to fight, or that he was supposed to fight according to the script. According to the script, and when I say that, I'm not saying that this is fixed in a certain way, or at least to the greatest of degrees. I'm just saying that that's the script that they wanted. They wanted Golovkin to fight Canelo Alvarez or Cotto, but more than likely Canelo, because he was the younger and more marketable and more appealing fighter. That's the script that they want to go. And if the script ends up going according to plan, they want Teofimo Lopez to win this fight. So like I said, Josh Taylor, he's going to have to be very, very careful. And like I said, Gennady versus Danny Jacobs, for example, Danny Jacobs was not in there later on script. He's a very good fighter, but even had Danny Jacobs deserved to pull out that fight, they probably would have not gave Danny Jacobs that fight anyway. And that was a fight that, in my view, Gennady Golovkin clearly won 7 rounds to 5. But it was a fight that was, a very close fight. Danny Jacobs was already a fighter that had a loss on his record, and he was not quite as marketable as that of other fighters like that of Canelo. So that fight isn't really a huge generational fight. It was a very good fight, but that really was a stepping stone fight. That was not looked at as the creme de la creme fight. They were trying to get Gennady Golovkin in that ring against Canelo, and they were trying to take the sport further by more than likely giving Canelo Alvarez the edge.
Tio, in your last fight, you were technically knocked down. You got the split decision victory. Now, there was a mic moment after the fight, and a camera was...
There's no technically knocked down about it. He was knocked down not just once, but he really was knocked down twice in that fight. He's lucky that the referee, that they did not count that second knockdown. And you can already tell that, this announcer here, that, he's favoring Teofimo Lopez a little bit. So like I said, Josh Taylor, if you want to win this fight, you're going to have to win this 8 rounds to 4 at a minimum.
On you, and we heard you say, "Do I still got it?"
Bro, do I still have it? Man. Do I still got it?
So what did you mean when you said, "Do I still got it"?
Yeah, I'm someone that's media trained. There's red cameras when you see it, right? The red light and stuff. I know everybody's just watching me, so it's always more to talk about. It got boring to the point where, after I beat Lomachenko, everyone is just like, no one wanted to face me. So I got to spice it up a little.
No one wanted to face you, Teofimo Lopez. And don't get me wrong, Teo. I like him as a fighter. I think that he's very talented. But Devin Haney did want to fight you. And that's not me saying that you necessarily ducked Devin Haney, but you did not seem super excited to fight him. And Lomachenko also wanted to fight you in a rematch. You did not take that fight. So don't get me wrong. Teo, very greatly talented fighter, but let's cut the bullshit. And even Josh Taylor realizes, that, this dude, he's lying a little bit. Of course, he's doing it for the cameras, but, Teofimo Lopez, he knew that in that fight that he did not perform up to optimum. And Teofimo Lopez, the way that he lost against George Kambosos, it's probably worse for him than, say, a fighter potentially, like Josh Taylor losing, because the more expectations that you have, especially at that of a young of an age, you think that you pretty much have the world figured out, or that you have your career figured out. So you say, wow, I just beat Vasily Lomachenko, the guy who's looked at as the #1 pound-for-pound fighter. I can pretty much beat, whoever else it is, because I already beat my adversity. And then on top of that, with the expectations and the hype that he was getting around him, when he lost that George Kambosos fight, it did a great amount of mental damage to Teofimo Lopez. And I don't think that he's still fully recovered from that fight.
A little bit, so do I still got it? Yeah.
And you'll notice in some other sports as well, for those guys that are very, very highly hyped up, when they start losing matches, or when they start, losing certain matchups early on in their career, they either adjust to the adversity, or they eventually start to crumble. And then eventually it comes to a point to where, they pretty much are phased out. So once again, it's going to be very interesting to see how Teofimo Lopez mentally handles this fight, because Josh Taylor is going to come at him. And he's not going to show any mercy towards Teofimo Lopez whatsoever.
So it's all about just on June 7th, man. I'm really focused on the fight. We've been calling Josh Taylor for some time. That's who I am. I go after the guys that are supposedly the kingpin or the best at the division, and Josh Taylor is that guy. So, he beat Jack Catterall, no matter what, his hand was raised, not Catterall, so he's still undefeated. And in my eyes, he's still the undisputed guy at 140. That's why he carries the ring.
I would agree with that. He still is, in a way, the undisputed guy at 140 pounds. Not, of course, technically, because he gave up some of his other titles. And I think the reason why he did that, once again, is because once you become undisputed, I just don't think that there's really a great advantage to really keep all your titles, unless you're really going to stay at that weight division for a very long time, or if there's just no fights that you really want to get out of the way. Because what really do you have in terms of a major advantage having all the titles there, and you have to pay the sanctioning bodies to have all those belts in the first place, and then on top of that, you have to pretty much fight a multitude of mandatories, and if you want a big fight, you could potentially lose that fight and then lose all your belts, and then you have to fight that rematch, and there's no guarantee, at least at certain times, that rematch is ever going to happen. So I think that Josh Taylor did the right thing by getting rid of most of his titles.
Magazine. He didn't lose those belts. He just relinquished them. Something I should have done at 35, but everybody changes. Everybody learns from their mistakes, and you just grow from them. It's experience.
Let me ask Josh a question real quick. Josh, we know you've had a great career at 140 pounds. You had the spectacular win against Ramirez, and I know after that fight, when you were preparing for Catterall, you did struggle a little bit to make weight. You did finally make the weight, but I know you've talked about eventually even moving up to 147. This fight on June 10th is at 140. So how are you doing in terms of the weight cut for this fight?
I'm great. I'm well ahead of schedule. Listen, after that fight in Vegas, I went out, enjoyed life, celebrated the win, creating history, someone that no one's ever done in the UK. The 5th fighter ever only become the undisputed world champion in history in the 4-belt era. I went out, I wanted to enjoy that. Did it a little bit too much. Got back into camp, took Catterall lightly, took my foot off the gas.
I agree, you did take Jack Catterall lightly, and that probably should have been the first loss of your career. But because you were the more favorable and the more marketable fighter, you ended up just getting that split decision.
Complacency crept in. We're all human.
Because let's be real, none of the boxing promoters, nor none of the boxing fans, no one really gives a shit to watch about Jack Catterall, and the boxing promoters know that, once again, they will go in a very close fight with whoever is more marketable, period.
That's the mistakes that I made, and that's the price I ended up paying for it. Was end up looking terrible on the scales and putting a bad performance. When you live and you learn, don't you? So I'm not...
And isn't it so interesting that some of these channels, once again, that I like to review, like that of Dante's Boxing Nation, he used to have Josh Taylor allegedly as a top 5 pound-for-pound fighter. But then after the Jack Catterall fight, he apparently doesn't even have Josh Taylor on his top 10 pound-for-pound list anymore. And he now says that Regis Prograis is the true king of the 140-pound weight division. Once again, the only reason why Dante hypes up certain fighters like Josh Taylor and that of David Benavidez and other fighters that are not Black American fighters, and don't get me wrong, once again, of course, I think that quote-unquote old media or ESPN or Ring Magazine, that they also have racial politics as well. Most boxing fans do. But when it comes down to it, once again, that goes to show you that they're not really much better than those guys. And the only reason why they're using Josh Taylor and David Benavidez is because exactly that. They're using them. They're using them as pawns. The reason why they were using Josh Taylor is because they could say, wow, if Terrence Bud Crawford or if Errol Spence defeats him, they can say, wow, they defeated a former undisputed champion. Can you believe that? That truly means that they're the number 1 pound-for-pound fighter. And Josh Taylor is a great fighter, but I don't think I see him beating either Errol Spence or Terrence Bud Crawford, and it's no offense against him, but I don't see either of those fights being particularly close.
We're making these mistakes again. I've did that once in my whole career, in my whole 15-year career, and I'll not be doing that again.
We know what happened.
But once again, all of a sudden, Josh Taylor, all of a sudden he does not have as much use to them anymore, and all of a sudden he's no longer on even their top 10 pound-for-pound list. Isn't that interesting? Or at least I have not heard about it for a while. Very interesting.
The Catterall fight.
And once again, for them promoting David Benavidez, a guy that has been willing to fight everybody, why isn't David Benavidez on the top 10 pound-for-pound list? Because they love to put certain guys like Demetrius Andrade and Charlo, who allegedly love to fight everybody, even though Charlo, he's done more avoiding than really chasing great fighters in his career. Of course, Andrade, he's chased a lot of great fighters in his career, but I think it's going to be very hard for him to get a fight because he's, dangerous with his type of style, and on top of that, he has no star appeal. So it's going to be very hard, in my view, for him to get big fights, but we'll see what happens with him later on. Hopefully he eventually gets his shot. But anyways, like I said, isn't it interesting how all of a sudden, Josh Taylor, he drops from top 5 to not even top 10? After one controversial fight, but apparently Jamel Charlo, he's top 5 pound for pound, even though he, had that loss to Tony Harrison a couple years ago, and then got a very controversial draw over that of Brian Castano. Isn't that interesting?
Right. Josh, you've now changed trainers, no longer with Ben Davison. You're now with Joe McNally, who we see sitting next to you. Josh, why did you decide to make a change at trainer?
Because I needed a change. The trainer wasn't the right for me. It wasn't right for me. It wasn't working for me. I need to do what I do for myself and do what I do best.
The thing is, it's not the trainer's fault. It's yours. It's not the trainer's fault. You go and switch another trainer and then you have to adapt. You're going to still fight the same that you probably fought with Catterall. Doesn't change. That shows weakness. That's how I see it. Whether he's your new trainer or not, it's just the facts, mate.
I don't think that it shows weakness at all. In fact, I showed, in my personal view, I think that it shows a great ability and a great amount of IQ to know what takes a better step in your career. And Ben Davidson, I believe, the trainer that worked for Josh Taylor, he's an okay trainer in my view, but I'm not quite sure if he's an elite enough trainer to really take you to the huge next level. Even Tyson Fury, eventually got rid of Ben Davidson. And even, I believe, with the John Fury, I believe, who's Tyson Fury's father, he eventually said that if Tyson stayed with Ben Davidson, that Tyson Fury would get knocked out clean cold by Deontay Wilder, and he may have been correct. So it was the proper move for, that of Tyson Fury to move on from him, and it probably was the correct move for Josh Taylor. And of course, a lot of people believe that Teo should be moving on from his father, which I slightly agree with. In my view, he certainly should have someone new in his corner, probably a new main trainer, but we'll see what happens.
Let me ask you, you must have seen some clips or criticism of Josh Taylor's last fight, and he hasn't been out for a year. Do you think that makes a difference?
Doesn't matter, I mean, it really doesn't matter what makes a difference.
Josh Taylor has been out for a year, so like I said, that is going to be very interesting to see how that ends up being a factor. But like I said, I've never really bought into the being out for a year factor. I mean, I'm sure it's a little bit of a factor, but in my view, the rusty excuse is only really good or a valid excuse when you've been out for about maybe a year and a half to 2 years, probably around 2 years. Because a year, I mean, I've seen a multitude of fighters off for a year, and they still perform decently well.
Whether he's been out for a year or not, he tells himself who he is, and every day he goes there and he looks himself in the mirror probably and says, I'm this Scottish, giant guy, and I'm going to beat Teofimo and put him on a stretcher.
Scottish-Italian guy? Well, that doesn't even make sense.
That's a Scottish, But hey, really, it just comes to all those things. I can't.
I'll tell you what, I love these two's chemistry. They should be on a talk show, just like Skip and Shannon were after their career ends.
I can't necessarily speak upon what he's going to do until we get there in the ring. So, everything else is just noise.
You mentioned weight classes there, and Josh Taylor has campaigned at 140 for most of his career, if not all of his career. You were at lightweight. You're moving up now. This is your third fight at 140 pounds. So let's bring in LaRon Turner, strength and conditioning coach of Teo. How is Teo handling this 140 pounds?
Oh, he's handling it really well, man. He's putting on size, but he's cutting down at the same time. It's pretty crazy. His body.
Well, he should be handling it well because Teofimo Lopez, just like Devin Haney, has really always been a natural 140-pounder. He's a guy that, in my view, was always a little bit big for the 135-pound weight division. Of course, to his credit, he was able to make it there, but he's never really been a guy that's been a natural 135-pounder. When you take a look at Teofimo Lopez versus George Kambosos, Teo looked like he had about 15 pounds of weight all over Kambosos. Like, he was huge compared to him.
He can adapt to anything I give him, whether it's circuit training, whether it's running, long distances, weight training. He's adapting to it all. It's amazing seeing him work really hard every single day.
Getting it.
Josh, we know that in the lead up to this fight, you've said that Teofimo is mentally fragile. You said you're going to decapitate him, right? So why do you feel that way?
Just with the things he says, the things he does, he's mentally weak. He's a mouse. And he's already got the doubts in his mind. And I'm going to cement him, and I'm going to put this guy into retirement after I've given him that much of a beating and a schooling.
A mouse or a moose?
I'll say this. I think that Josh Taylor somewhat has a point. I'm not going to call Teofimo Lopez mentally weak per se, but he has not been able to handle that George Kambosos loss very well at all. So maybe Josh Taylor's a little bit more correct than maybe what I even think. I don't really like to call any professional fighter mentally weak, but I think that from Josh Taylor's point of view, that he is a little bit mentally weak. I think that Josh Taylor looks at Teofimo Lopez as someone that, you know, I'm not going to say had things easy, but had things a little bit easier than what he had to do. Josh Taylor does not come from the easy side of the street. Josh Taylor is a guy that, you know, he was not really expected to get this far. Josh Taylor is a guy that was not fed with the golden spoon, or he was not really in the main game plans. And I don't think that Teo was necessarily fed with the golden spoon, but I think that Top Rank had plans for him. Josh Taylor pretty much had to force his way onto the scene very dominantly, from a dominant performance to Victor Postal, from beating Regis Prograis to then eventually beating Jose Ramirez. And I think Josh Taylor takes a look at it and says, I'm going to beat you mentally and physically.
Which one is it?
A mouse.
A mouse? Yeah, I love that.
A mouse is mighty.
I love that saying, mate.
You're a mouse.
Thank you for the compliment. Oh, man. I get...
What the fuck was that? Like I said, man, I love these two. These two should go on a talk show after the boxing careers are done.
Wait, man, I'm gonna this guy up, man. I can't wait. This is gonna be fun.
You got asthma, your lungs are going to be on fire. Trust me. I'm going to make you work that hard. Your heart and lungs are going to be exploding.
What do I have to lose? What do I have to...
That's going to be very interesting. Once again, Josh Taylor is going to put on a great pace, and Josh does not usually tire out from what I've seen. Like I said, in that last fight against Jack Catterall, you know, he did not look that good, but I agree with Josh. I don't think that he took that fight you know, very seriously. I think that he expected that Jack Catterall was going to be a decent amount easier than that of Regis Prograis or Jose Ramirez. And I think that he thought that more than likely he was probably going to get the stoppage within about 7 to 10 rounds. But this fight he's taken very seriously. So like I said, we'll see. You know, maybe the year layoff, it could end up being, you know, a little bit more in Teo's favor. Maybe Josh Taylor, maybe his stamina won't be the same. It could be a factor. We'll see.
lose? I'm Teofimo, against all odds. The guy that comes in there when everyone thinks that he's done. I give you guys what you want, but I'm not going to give you guys what you need until June 10th.
Let's just get back to the sport of boxing for a moment.
No, that is boxing, though. What are you talking about, mate? That is boxing. Boxing is what it was.
Clown.
Hey, don't shake yourself, man.
This guy's a piece of
Don't shake yourself.
You're a piece of
I'm not just a piece. I'm all of it.
Yeah, you are. Piece of big, massive bit of
While you go out there with your Scottish dress and you look like, oh, let me
Yeah, you're going to feel the wrath, boy. Trust me. You're going to feel it.
That's all rubbish, mate.
You're known as the Tartan Tornado. You're a very proud Scotsman, aren't you?
Yeah.
Does that play a part in your
Absolutely.
standing?
Absolutely, that's part of my makeup. I am a very proud fighting Scotsman, and I'm very proud to put my country on the map. The first undisputed world champion since Ken Buchanan, who just recently passed away. So that's one thing I'm very proud of putting my country on the map, representing Scotland.
And you like to walk into the bagpipes,
Absolutely,
don't you?
absolutely. Scottish warrior, absolutely.
You're both phenomenal fighters. It's in you. But I wanted to ask Joe, because we haven't heard from Joe yet, about the technical things that you're working on with Josh for the style of Teofimo Lopez.
Yeah, well, you know, Gareth, I've known Teo for a long time, representing Honduras in the Olympics and a few fights before that. And, you know, we caught my eye back then. You know, we still see the professional now as the kid he was back then, doing the same things. He's developed, he's come on, he's won a lot. And, you know, we've utilised a lot of stuff we can capitalise on, and likewise be careful also, because he's a dangerous fighter and the respect to be shown in the gym. Josh has shown them respect and he's in fantastic condition, as you can see, and, you know, he'll be ready come the 10th of June.
Is it going to be a very technical fight early on?
It's going to be any fight what Josh wants to play.
In terms of the start, I do believe it is going to be very interesting because Josh, in my view, does have to make Teofimo Lopez very uncomfortable. And he is going to have to once again try to make him uncomfortable because you don't want Teofimo Lopez, getting comfortable with his counters, especially with that, once you're trying to get on the inside. Now, Timothy Bradley actually brought up a very interesting point, I believe. Or maybe it wasn't Timothy Bradley, maybe it was someone else. But we haven't really seen what Teofimo Lopez can truly do on the inside. And certain people, they think that a great inside fighter is just someone that is willing to exchange with you. But that's not really it. That's why when I reviewed a video, I believe, by Dante's Boxing Nation not too long ago, and, Timothy Bradley stated that he doesn't believe that Devin Haney is the greatest of inside fighters. He was correct because Devin Haney gets hit with way too many punches, and he's a guy that prefers to box on the outside and in that of the mid-range. It doesn't mean that he's not willing to exchange with you on the inside, but he's not great on the inside. To be great on the inside, you need to be great defensively, you need to be great inside the clinch, and you need to be great within close range. Is Teofimo Lopez great on the inside range? He's great with certain counters when guys lunge in, especially with a repetitive pattern, but is he a guy that is going to be able to outperform Josh Taylor in the clinch? Is he a guy that is going to be able to out-counter or outdo him once Josh Taylor gets on the inside and once he gets comfortable and once he starts to get going? We'll see. In my view, Teofimo Lopez, if he wants to win this fight, he's going to have to also make Josh Taylor very uncomfortable. He's going to have to try to time Josh Taylor very, timely and very perfectly. Once he starts getting on the inside, hopefully for him, Josh Taylor will, lunge, maybe possibly get knocked down early on in the fight, maybe get him mentally rattled a little bit. But that's going to be a very tough task because Josh Taylor is not a guy that is easily rattled.
Josh wants to fight in the pocket if he wants to box. He's not the undisputed champion for nothing. And look, Teo will be dancing to Josh Taylor's tune on the 10th and truly believe that.
There's just no better feeling than performing.
You're not a human, you're a star.
It's going to be a great fight. This is a hell of a fight, and this is the fight of the century, not that Garcia and Davis fight. This is the true kingpin of it all. It's the 100th year of the Ring magazine, the Rocky Belt.
I'll say this, in my personal view, this fight is more worthy of top 10 pound for pound acclaim, and I also personally find this fight more entertaining. But Gervonta Tank Davis right now is going to be the new up-and-coming face of boxing. That is if Canelo Alvarez, if he is full-on done with his career, or if he's not going to continue winning big fights. So we'll see.
Wait, yeah, I'm excited.
He's right, it's a big fight. It's a big fight, it's a great fight. It's a huge fight. And it's one that's huge both sides of the pond, here and over there. So it's got the people talking. So it's a big fight, absolutely.
Yeah, I was going to say, is this a must-win fight for you, Josh, in lots of ways? Is it a must-win fight for him?
Well, the fight for every boxer, every single fight is looked at as a must-win because you never know what can change the tides of your career. And if you're intelligent enough and competitive enough, you want to win every single fight in your career. But this, in terms of his standards, I understand what he's trying to say. In terms of his context, I understand what he's trying to say. Because this is really a must-win for both of their careers. If Josh Taylor ends up losing this fight, it is not going to be easy for him to try and climb back to the top. Because Teofimo Lopez, he can be put in there with a multitude of other top contenders, pretty much tomorrow. A lot of fighters, because of the type of hype that, he brings to the table, he's going to be able to get a multitude of big fights. He has that Latin following. But as for Josh Taylor, other than that of the Scottish following, what main following does he really have? That's why I say Josh Taylor's going to have to really make sure, if he wants to win this fight, that he's going to have to be decently dominant. So we'll see what ends up happening in that regard. But this truly is a big fight for both of them. I think that more than likely that if Josh Taylor loses, that his career will probably worsen more than that of Teofimo Lopez's if it loses. But you never know, because Teo, once again, he was not in a mentally good place after that George Kambosos loss. However, he may possibly take this loss better because I think he looks at Josh Taylor as more as a 50-50 matchup and a guy that is truly dangerous. I think that a big part of the reason why he's a little bit pissed off as to why he lost to George Kambosos is because he views him as someone that he probably should have not lost to. But we'll see.
Every fight's a must-win fight. Every fight's a must-win fight. If this fight goes wrong, or I get the wrong decision, then it's back to the drawing board for me.
I agree with Josh. Every fight is a must-win fight. That's how the elite fighters think.
And the plans that I've got to become 2-weight world champion go way back. So, yes, every fight is a must-win fight. I've got plans and ambitions that I want to do. I'm become a 2-weight world champion. Hell, two-weight undisputed world champion. Something that nobody's in the sport's ever done. That's the kind of goals that I've got. So every fight is a must-win fight.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, the new lightweight champion of the world, George Cambosa.
Teo, can I ask you, Josh hasn't lost yet. How is a boxer affected after that loss? What do you have to go through to come back?
See, that's the thing. That's probably why he calls me a mouse, because I don't believe I lost that fight neither, man. The referee raised my hand.
Bullshit, Teofimo Lopez, and you can say that all you want to, and I think that you want to try to make yourself believe that you ended up winning that fight, but you know deep down that either A, that you did not win that fight, or that you did not do enough in order to for sure get the decision. And you know how I know that? Because after the fight, when he was talking all this bullshit about, oh, how I don't make excuses, but, you know, I had a lot of things going on. You know, basically the same shit Deontay Wilder was doing after he ended up losing to Tyson Fury. You know, like, just cut the bullshit, man. You lost. And don't get me wrong. I understand it's a very hard pill to swallow. No fighter likes losing, you know, especially in the sport of boxing. It's probably the most humiliating sport to lose, and I understand. But at the end of the day, I know deep down that you know that you did not do enough to clearly pull out that decision.
And before they called it for Cambosas. I know how it works. I know the ones and twos. To me, it's not really a loss. It's just lessons. You learn how to maneuver after that. See, he doesn't know what defeat tastes like.
Well, that's great, Teofimo Lopez. I think that is great to take lessons after you end up losing a fight. But I'm not really sure if you've learned your lesson yet. Teofimo Lopez comes across to me at times as a little bit too arrogant. Not confident, but arrogant, because I think that Teofimo Lopez, that he's still not accepting some of the reality of what ended up happening in the George Kambosos fight. I think that deep down, he knows what ended up truly happening in that fight, just like deep down Deontay Wilder knew that Tyson Fury pretty much beat him up in that fight. And Teo didn't get beat up in that fight necessarily, but he did get beat to the point to where I thought that he just lost. So like I said, you're going to have to eventually accept reality. And if you don't eventually accept reality, eventually reality is going to beat you into submission.
Yeah, I've lost 21 times in my whole career, and I'm still going. And people call me a legend. People call me the greatest. And it's because of those reasons. We never stop.
Who calls you the
Keep
greatest?
moving for it.
You call yourself the greatest?
I'm the double greatest, not the greatest. The greatest is Muhammad Ali, but I'm the double greatest.
Okay. All right.
Look, technically with Taylor, you know, good fundamentals. He tries to keep his distance, catches his range. You know, he baits. There's a lot of things, man. I could really execute on those things that I understand from my own experience. And this is what it is.
Well, I hope for your sake, Teofimo Lopez, that you do and that you put up a really good fight, because if not, Josh Taylor is possibly going to win this fight 8 rounds to 4. And that more than likely is what I'm predicting in the fight, is Josh Taylor to probably win the fight 8 rounds to 4. But if it was 7 rounds to 5, I wouldn't be surprised. Like I said, Josh Taylor, he is going to have to really put on debatably the best performance of his career, or at least as good as what he was in the Jose Ramirez and the Regis Prograis fights, but probably more dominant because Teo is more marketable than both of those fighters.
If you say you're the greatest, you got to prove it, right? So fight the best guys in the game. And that's what I'm doing. We've asked for Josh Taylor for a long time, and we've worked our way. It's not something that we were asking as let it be given. You know, Josh Taylor is the best guy that everyone wants. I'm here stepping on there with only 3 fights. This is my 3rd fight, technically at 140. A lot of you guys don't even know your research about Teofimo, that I fought at 40 before. You guys don't know about Teofimo, and I'm thankful for it because it's perfect. It's really perfect. This is technically my 4th fight at 140.
Teo, are you showing respect for Josh there by the things you're saying about him?
I'm just speaking on his accolades. I'm not showing respect on that part. I'm just speaking the facts. Facts is not respect. The hell? Why do I gotta respect this? What is there to respect?
Well, he was the undisputed champion.
Well, you got to be careful, Teo, because your disrespect of certain opponents has gotten you in trouble in the past. And Teofimo Lopez, he has kind of that almost like, you know, I was watching a video one time by Chronicles of Judah 144, and he said it overall pretty much the same thing that I was thinking, that I believe Teo I think he's from Brooklyn, but a lot of those dudes from New York, they have a very bad, egotistical or very arrogant problem. Mike Tyson, Zab Judah, Teofimo Lopez, some of those other dudes. So you got to be very careful.
He won the
Because a big part of the reason why you lost the George Kambosos fight, Mr. Teofimo Lopez, is because you did not respect your opponent well enough.
And I was the undisputed champion at 135, and y'all took that away from me. Who gives a fly? Y'all scared of Teofimo at 25. I'm young. I haven't even hit my prime yet. I'm just getting warmed up.
You ain't gonna have a prime after this fight.
Oh, yeah, you know what? You're right. They're going to call me a greatest and the youngest active Hall of Famer at 25. That's more than prime.
I'll be retired.
That's more than prime.
I'll say this, man. If Josh Taylor does end up beating Teofimo Lopez, and if he clearly beats him, Teofimo Lopez's quote-unquote prime, it is going to be heavily affected. Because then he's pretty much just going to become the next Danny Garcia, a guy that's looked at as a very decent boxer and could possibly beat a lot of these other guys, that are very decent. But can he really defeat the true A-plus level fighters of these weight divisions? We'll see.
In retirement, early retirement.
You're at the end of your road, and your trainer knows it, but he's got to motivate you mentally to get there. That's all. Carry the man. Carry that dead weight.
I don't need no mental motivation. Trust me.
Just carry that dead weight, you fat.
He called Josh Taylor a fat fuck. I really don't understand that, but maybe because he missed weight. I don't think Josh Taylor ever missed weight. But I don't know why Teofimo Lopez would be talking about that when he also had problems making weight with his weight division. But maybe he's just talking about that because Josh is having trouble making the current weight. I don't know. But anyways, like I said, Josh Taylor, I agree with a lot of the things that he's saying, or I believe a lot of the things that he's saying. Like I said, Josh Taylor does not come from the easy side of the street. He does not come from the easy side of the road. This is a dude that once again had to work for everything that he had to get in. He was not a personally probably favorable, marketable fighter. He was a guy that pretty much had to claw and scrape his way into the picture. So like I said, Josh Taylor's going to be mentally ready for this fight. The only question is that is he going to have the right tactics, and also will that year layoff, will it potentially be an issue? But we'll see.
Carry it.
I've got a mental fortitude.
Carry it, man.
I'm a mental fort. You're a mouse.
Thank you.
I'm unbreakable mentally. I'm unbreakable mentally.
I'm only warming up.
That's the one that's gonna make us win. All right?
How important is your father?
And of course, his father just said that that's the one that's going to make us win, and I believe it was coming off of a very good, snappy jab. But Teo, if you're going to win this fight, you need to keep your hands up throughout the majority of the fight. A lot of the times after Teofimo Lopez, after he throws a jab especially, he pretty much just keeps his hands down, or once again, he goes into this Philly shell without using his feet or without shoulder rolling at the proper time, and he'll end up getting hit with a multitude of lead hands. And that's why I say, Josh Taylor, if you're Josh Taylor, you're going to want to throw a multitude of left crosses straight down the pipe, because Teo is going to get hit with those.
In your corner.
Oh, my father's everything, man. The dynamic duo.
But that also being said, Josh Taylor's going to have to be very careful of that slick left hook that Teofimo Lopez has, but especially that good right cross down the pipe with that overhand right. That's the main punch he's going to have to watch out for, is that good overhand right or that right cross.
I like to keep him reserved right now, for my own reasons. This is not a backup guy here next to me. This is a team sport. So that's really what it is. My father is everything. A lot of people want to bring other trainers involved. I've had assistant coaches, but they don't know about boxing to the point that my father does. And that's why it's just me and him going into this fight. Don't want nobody, don't need
Well, we'll see about that, Mr. Teofimo Lopez, because to be quite honest with you, your father in that George Kambosos fight, he didn't really seem to give you the greatest of advice, at least from what I've seen. And also in that Sandor Martin fight. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I didn't hear enough about it, so I'm not going to go on a confirmed statement. But let's see. Because if Teofimo Lopez ends up losing this fight, especially to the point where it's a beating, and that is possible, he's going to have to get a new trainer in his corner. Whether he wants to keep his father in his corner or not, he is going to have to get someone new, even potentially if he wins this fight.
nobody coming in that. My father's a very, very intelligent man in the game. Very. I mean, I know my in boxing, and he still surprises me daily. Daily.
Josh, we know that you've had success when you've come over to America in the past. Do you feel like coming to New York? Is this enemy territory?
Nah, boxing ring's a boxing ring. I'm excited for coming to New York. It's the mecca of boxing.
Well, Josh, what I'll tell you is this, and I'm not sure really what context he's talking about. I'm not really sure if he's talking about if he looks at the U.S. as enemies because there's been a little bit of a rivalry, or whether he's saying that, the crowd is going to be more on that of Teofimo Lopez's side. But Josh, you're going to have to look at this as enemy territory. And this is what I'm also saying. That this is something that Eastern European or Cuban or Argentine fighters need to realize. When you're in that boxing ring against a fighter, like that of a Canelo Alvarez or a Devin Haney with Lomachenko, or, someone like that of, someone who is looked at as more marketable, whoever it may be, that of the American or that of the Latin American / Latin fighter that they have certain plans for. You have to take a look at everyone other than your corner as enemy territory, period. You have to take a look at the judges as enemy territory. You have to take a look at basically, the promoter possibly as enemy territory, at least the other one. You have to take a look at everyone as enemy territory, the crowd, everybody, because they are going to go with more than likely, who the more marketable fighter is. Maybe not always the crowd, because the crowd, of course, doesn't always cheer for who the more marketable fighter is, especially certain Black American fighters. But, once again, Josh Taylor, he's going to have to take a look at everybody as, enemy territory here. Just my personal view of it.
Madison Square Garden. I'm fighting in the arena where 99% of boxers who turn professional and dream of becoming world champion want to fight in New York City in Madison Square Garden. I'm one of the very few that's doing it. So, it's not enemy territory. This is a dream come true, fighting in a venue like this.
Tio, you're proudly representing Brooklyn, New York. On June 10th, what do you think it's going to be like in Madison Square Garden? What are the fans going to be like?
Oh man, it's a whole, always, every time you fight at the Mecca, it's just a different energy. And that's what gets me going. That's really what it is. So when it comes to the Mecca, you just got to be there to actually feel the experience. That's where legends are born, and that night I'm just going to have fun. That's what I missed, I wasn't having fun. The Martin fight, I was taking it too serious. You know what I'm saying? We just got to have fun.
You weren't having fun in...
Well, you're going to have to take this fight very seriously, Mr. Teofimo Lopez, because unless you knock him down early or find some way to really get Josh Taylor to possibly really, really adjust very early on, you're going to have to take this fight very seriously, because Josh Taylor is going to really put the fight on you.
In recent fights, you're having fun again now.
Absolutely. I'm not in Vegas. I'm not doing camp in any of those sorts, sucking me dry. I got to live a little bit. I'm young, I'm 25, I'm having fun, and that's what was the takeover, back to back, 2017, 2018, Prospect of the Years, 2019, we won the World Championship in Mecca.
Anything is possible!
So it's just all those things.
In terms of official predictions, Josh, I know you've said you're going to knock him out in rounds 6 through 8, you're going to retire this man, so let me ask you this, why do you feel that way?
Because I'm the best. And this guy's so mentally insecure. I'm going to cement all his insecurities that he's got, and he's going to be retired.
Tio, when you hear Josh Taylor say he's going to knock you out in the middle rounds, he's going to retire you, what is your response?
Oh, the only best response. Everyone got a plan until they get punched in the face. Mike Tyson.
You're not Mike Tyson. You ain't no Mike Tyson. Trust me.
That's going to be very interesting. That's also going to be interesting, but in my view, that mentality actually goes more for Teofimo Lopez or against him, because like I said, Josh Taylor is going to be the fighter that is really going to try to put it on Teofimo Lopez. And I've seen, certain people say that, well, maybe Teofimo Lopez, maybe his power will be the game changer here. Is it possible that Josh Taylor will have a problem with his power? Maybe, but to be quite honest with you, I think that Josh Taylor has dealt with punchers that are around the same level as that is Teofimo Lopez. I think that Regis Prograis was a guy that was probably around the same level of power punching, if not possibly even a little bit higher than that of Teofimo Lopez. Now, I could be wrong, but, we'll see about that.
I don't want to be. I'm Teofimo, the one and only. The man, the myth, the legend. That's it.
But I got to poke you, Josh, for a minute and just say, when you say, just call you out on this, you don't watch him.
No, really not.
It's hard to believe that.
I do and focus on myself. Yeah. I watch his fights when they're live, when they've been live. Okay. I've watched his fights. I've seen enough of him. I've seen how much mistakes he makes fundamentally. He's never changed. He's never changed.
Wait, didn't you say you didn't
I would someone agree with that.
watch none of my film?
Says I saw you when you're live. I watch your fights when you're live. It's like yourself, I'm a boxing fan.
But then he said he didn't watch none of my fight live.
So when you're live, I watch your fights. I don't study this guy.
Not the Martin either.
I've saw enough of him. He's not in my league, and I'm going to knock him out, and that's it.
Contradicting yourself there, buddy.
You got a final message, Teo, for Josh or all?
Teofimo's doing his greatest Brooklyn/Bronx impression of trying to get under someone's skin. Reminds me of some of the good New York friends that I have. They act exactly like him.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, man. Hey, listen, for everybody tuning in, listen, thank you guys. To all my fans, to all my friends, and to all the children out there that are seeing this and really want to become something in the sport. You know, this is what it takes. Not just a trash talk, but backing it up and putting everything up on your back and carrying it with not pride, but with humility and with grace.
You're talking about humility and grace.
Well, yeah, it's how you carry
This
it.
guy just talks so much. It's unbelievable.
Well, this is a fight game.
You're a clown, you
I'm
are.
outside the ring right now, mate. I'm outside the ring. There's a whole nother guy. You got to be, like Kobe actually says. He says, are you the same beast, but a different animal?
You're so stupid, mate. It's unbelievable.
Right now, you're seeing a different animal right now. So, you know, it's just those things. I don't really need to talk to you. I'm talking to my people at the moment. And para la raza, para toda mi gente, latino, público, mira, Latinoamérica, estamos aquí para pelear con este y vamos a ganar esta pelea. It's just really what it is, man.
Sí, estamos entendiendo, Teo, en español, claro. But in English again, can you take his fans by beating him?
I think I've already got his fans, to be honest.
Yeah. But, you know, so...
I'm not quite so sure about that. Once again, Eastern European/European fighters, they don't usually translate in terms of especially taking those Latin American fans. Those Latin American fans are very loyal to their fighters.
For everybody, you know, I'm grateful for this opportunity. This is what we do.
But don't get me wrong. There could be a certain amount of Latin American fans that do tune in more to Josh Taylor because he ends up beating Teofimo Lopez, whether they love him or hate him. That's, of course, how a certain amount of fans eventually grew with that of Floyd Mayweather Jr.
That's how we do it. This is why we call ourselves a takeover. And this fight right here will solidify as in the worldwide takeover.
Hey, I've had enough of this guy.
June 10th, ESPN. Get your tickets now.
Hey, I've had enough of listening to you. Waffling on. A lot of I'm off ski. See you on June 10th.
This man's on his way out, you know, 30-something years old. You know, he's got to leave. All good. Hey, but we stay.
We're going to have to say goodbye for now. Thanks very much for your time over there. We cannot wait for June the 10th. We cannot wait for this fight. It really is set up to be absolutely spectacular.
But anyways, that's pretty much about it for this video. Of course, it's a bit longer than some of my other fight predictions because I thought that I would review the segment, make it a little bit more interesting. I think Teofimo Lopez tried his best to try and get under Josh Taylor's skin, but I don't think that Josh Taylor is a fighter that's going to be easily rattled. And I think that Teofimo Lopez, even though, of course, he put it on well for the cameras, and he did a great job trash talking in that regular New York fashion, I think that he realizes deep down a little bit that Josh Taylor might be saying certain things that are somewhat correct. So, like I said, we'll see. We're going to truly see once again. You always see truly how great fighters are in the ring, both physically and mentally. And we're going to truly see where Teofimo Lopez is mentally in this fight. If a knockout does end up happening in this fight for Josh Taylor, I'm not going to predict 6 or 8 rounds. I'm not saying that I'd be shocked that that happened, but I would predict more than likely probably around 10 rounds, 9 or 10 rounds. If Teofimo Lopez ended up getting a knockout in this fight, I wouldn't be surprised if it was around, anywhere from 8 to 10 rounds, 8 to 9 rounds, somewhere around there. But that's only if Teofimo Lopez really puts on a flawless performance or is really able to catch Josh Taylor, with the bad layoff. But, we'll see. But anyways, that's pretty much about it for today. Just thought that I would talk about that. A very great fight. That's pretty much all I got to say for now. And we'll see who wins this Saturday. That's pretty much about it. I'll talk to you all later.